Good morning, West and the world. Welcome to your review video for Tuesday, December the 3rd, following this morning's discussion of the building of the Cold War Order. Our central theme this morning was trying to understand what the Cold War was and what brought it about. We began our exploration by talking about how the Cold War emerges out of the experience of World War II. How it is that the United States and the Soviet Union, these two allies who had been working together to try to defeat the Nazi German state in Central Europe, now find themselves as the two great global powers, and how they find themselves in consistent competition with one another. On the one hand, we said that this is a war that is about ideology. That's why it's called the Cold War, is because the United States and the Soviet Union never come to shooting directly at one another. This, we know, is a bit misleading because, of course, there are proxy wars, very violent, very destructive wars that are fought in places like Nicaragua or in Cuba, in Congo, Ethiopia, Somalia, in Vietnam, Cambodia, the Korean Peninsula, and many other parts of the world over the course of the second half of the 20th century, all of which are extensions of American and Soviet machinations, but none of which directly involve the U.S. fighting against the Soviet Union. So to name it the Cold War ignores in some ways the destructiveness of this struggle for the lives of people in mostly developing countries around the world. But it reminds us that this is a war that contrasts these two ideological systems. The United States and its sort of stand in terms of the sort of Western tradition of liberal democratic participation, of a capitalist economic system in which individuals are pursuing their own self-interest, and that of the Soviet Union, which is pursuing its own particular vision of that Marxist ideal, pursuing the utopia of the proletariat, a kind of social equality brought about by social and economic revolution. So on the one hand, we have a struggle of ideology. On the other hand, there are much more sorts of practical realities that emerge out of World War II, particularly the difference between the American experience of the war, which, although it had been costly in terms of the lives of their soldiers and expenditure of money, had not been particularly destructive to the lives of civilians, nor had it been particularly damaging. In fact, in many ways it had benefited the American economy. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, had suffered direct invasion by Nazi Germany. They had seen the deaths of millions of civilians and soldiers. The destruction and devastation to their state was far more extensive in its reach. And so the understanding of these two states about what the post-war order needs to look like is fundamentally different. The American search for continued prosperity, the Soviet concern for securing its own long-term future and protection from a central German state. These politics, these different expectations and different visions of what the world needs to look like, play out, we said, in a variety of contexts. Especially, of course, in Germany itself and in the city of Berlin with the Berlin airlift of 1948. But they also begin to play themselves out in places like Korea, in the conflict between 1950 and 1953. This reordering leads also, of course, to the playing out of this competition in the building of the nuclear arms race, which was the theme we introduced at the end. In the presidency of Eisenhower in particular, America commits itself to building a vast nuclear armory, and the Soviet Union feels compelled to match that sort of commitment. And the reality of nuclear weapons becomes sort of the fundamental social reality of this Cold War era, as people begin to live in an era of duck and cover films, right? Trying to teach them what to do in the case of this sort of expected nuclear holocaust. The ways in which those fears, the ways in which the machinations, the rivalry, the struggle of the US and the Soviet Union play out in redrawing the map of the world, the ways in which they help set the stage for the world we live in today, are the themes that we'll be starting to explore when we return to class on Thursday. I'll see you there.